Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Julian. And I think it's really important to recognise that in New South Wales today there are 67 PCYCs. In my home state of Queensland, there's 56 PCYCs. And yet, as Julian just indicated, in the great state of Victoria, there's one PCYC in Victoria, and we're standing in it. Now, that is just simply not good enough. I was a youth worker, a volunteer youth worker in a past life, and I know how incredibly important it is to get access to young people. That early intervention, as Susan said, to show people that there's young kids, that there's a better way of life than a life of crime. And what people are telling me is that youth crime is the #1 issue, the #1 burning issue here in Victoria. And this Victorian state government, along with our federal government, have got to do better in protecting Australians, because that is their principal responsibility. But people like Anne and Chris here at the PCYC here in St Kilda have a very special job, and that is to engage with young people, to give them meaningful things to do, whether it's at the gym or playing basketball, whether it's helping them at homework. But this PCYC is at risk of closing because it gets no funding from either state or federal government, and that is an appalling state of affairs.
Thank you. Questions?
Victorian Premier this morning likened you to your predecessor Peter Dutton when he infamously came here and said that Melburnians were afraid to go out to dinner at night. She said you were punching down on Victorians by coming here and talking about nothing but crime. What's your response to that?
I'm not interested in the rhetoric that the Victorian Premier may come out with. I'm not going to get into any sort of war of words with the Victorian Premier. I'm here, we're here for the people of Victoria because we love this state, we love this city, we know they do. I've reflected on my experiences in Melbourne, and I know that Melbourne can be better than this, and it is the way it is under a Labor government, and maybe that Labor government needs to look very closely at itself. We're here in a facility that is all about intervening. We want young people who are on a pathway for crime and hopelessness to find hope, to find resolve, to get support. Where is the funding, Premier? What are you doing in this critical part of Melbourne to support youth? And more importantly, what are you doing with bail laws that release people onto the streets to reoffend and recommit crimes? And Premier, how many victims of crime have you personally met, listened to their stories and understood what has actually happened to them in their lives? So this isn't about a political fight. This is about the fight we have every day for all Australians who work hard and who deserve, top of the list, to feel safe in their communities.
Would the opposition consider pushing the federal government for federal police perhaps to step in or intervene, or any federal funding to help with the crime crisis in Victoria, similar to what Trump did, I guess, with the National Guard in that sense?
The first thing that the Victorian government needs to do is support its own police force. They are stretched to the limit. What our police do every day in the face of this crime wave is extraordinary, and it deserves recognition and support and funding.
When's the Liberals' policy review process set to be done? When are you going to start announcing the direction of the party?
Well, a few weeks ago I gave a speech at the CEDAR Forum, which is about economic development. My speech was about managing the budget, living within our means, and calling out Labor's spending, which is escalating rapidly to $1.2 trillion, leaving the next generation with a debt, leaving future generations worse off. And what I said in that policy speech was that we would manage the budget completely differently, and I set out how we would do exactly that. So I point people to that. And I also make this point, because it is serious, the way this government is spending your money, borrowed money, and the next generation's money. Every minute, it costs $50,000 just to pay the interest on the debt on Labor's debt. And that has to change. And we have to, for the sake of Gen Zs and millennials, get this back under control. And that was the important policy point I was making, and I made it again with the housing statistics that I mentioned. We have a divide in this country where you either have a house or you feel like you will never own a house. That's not good enough. That's something we're addressing. Watch closely in the next few weeks, and there'll be more policy announcements.
Just on James Patterson says the apology tour must end. There needs to be a time limit on legal soul searching. So can you say when your reviews on contentious issues like net zero, tax and spending will be released?
Well, I just talked about spending, and I just talked about some policy remarks there, and you'll see further policies made and explained. But I can reassure everyone that we are, across my team, working on policy development. We have 5 separate policy committees. My shadow ministers are reviewing policies, yes, but they're also bringing forward new ones. And they're going through all the processes that they should. Because what I said when I became leader was I wanted to enfranchise every single member of my party room who has a valuable contribution to make in the development of our policies going forward. And that's exactly what we're doing.
The net zero review? The net zero review. When's that coming?
Dan Tian, an outstanding Victorian, is leading that review, and it's predicated on 2 principles: that we will bring forward a policy that has affordable, reliable energy, and it has to be a stable grid, and it has to be affordable for households and businesses, and we will play our part in reducing emissions. I draw your attention to Labor's 2035 targets and that they failed their latest announcements on cost and credibility, and their energy policy is a train wreck, and you will of course see ours further developed in due course.
Just on James Patterson, did he go rogue with his public comments about mass therapy sessions?
Not at all. I read James's speech. He actually sent it to me before he delivered it. Julian was there as a custodian of the oration, the Tom Hughes oration, and it's an excellent speech. And what it does is remind all Australians of our Liberal values, where we back aspiration, where we back hard-working Australians that want to get ahead and play by the rules, develop a good future for themselves and their families, the Australians who built this country. So yes, I draw everyone's attention to the speech. It's excellent reading.
Have you spoken to the Victorian Premier? I know different sides of politics, but have you spoken to her, told her what you do differently to fix crime in the state?
Well, I know Brad Batten, the opposition leader in Victoria, has had many interactions and interventions on this important issue. And I hope that the Victorian Premier listens to Brad Batten, a former police officer, because he actually understands what needs to happen to get this state's crime wave under control.
You're as a federal opposition leader, obviously calling for change. Surely you can have a conversation with the Premier, tell her what you think should be done.
Well, I know that Brad Batten will speak to the Premier, does speak to the Premier, and the Premier is well and truly invited to consult me and my team on anything she might wish to around issues that she seems to be struggling with.
Your views
About the state of the Liberal Party in Victoria, Brad Batten's leadership is not very cloud at the moment.
Well, this is commentary that you as commentators are entitled to make. I know Brad. I catch up with him regularly. He's an outstanding opposition leader. He knows exactly what needs to happen in the state of Victoria. He loves this state just as we all do. He believes passionately in the future of its citizens and its manufacturing industries and its households. But everywhere you turn, you see serious problems. And here, to talk about the crime wave, I once again remind people there's a Labor government here in Victoria and there's a Labor government in Canberra, and they both need to address this.
Last question, guys.
Why aren't you appearing with Brad Batten?
Well, Parliament's sitting, and it's pretty difficult to get the leave passed from Parliament. Thanks, everybody.
Susan Lee there in Victoria, where the crime wave has really been generating a lot of headlines. She's been meeting with locals this morning. We'll get further reaction on that story with our reporters in a moment.